I want to share with you some of the background of the Israeli high-tech story. Maybe this one. Yes. Israel, as you may know, it's a tiny country with huge geopolitical problems. Yet, it was able to create a good economy with a very important high-tech sector contributing to 15% of GDP and approximately 50% of the export. I also picked some statistics that show some of the culture background that Israelis tend to be early adopters of technology. Some statistics that show the size of the high-tech. Israel is in many cases referred to as the Silicon Valley, a small river in Arabic. It has, I saw some other claims here, but we claim to be the highest density of startup companies outside of the Silicon Valley. And another measure of the success is the number of Israeli companies traded on NASDAQ and on European stock markets. We also see the importance of the venture capital sector, and it is considered to be the largest European country and the third US state in terms of VC size after California and Massachusetts. Looking at how to create innovation, so a little bit of historical background. I picked here a slide of an invention before the independence during the Palestine days. But there was a transition from an agro-technological country with substantial defense research in the 50s, 60s, 70s, moving into a more civilized research. An important, perhaps, anecdote of this history is a certain national project in the 80s of the Lavi project. It's an Israeli-made fighter plane. And I think the anecdote here is the fact that there was a national project, and even though eventually it was canceled, the country gained companies, technologies, experience around a main goal. What's one last important thing, probably a more critical one, is the Yozma project. Yozma is entrepreneurship in Hebrew. This is one of the key government activities that really made the VC sector. The government had a program that to form 10 VC funds. 40% of the investment was made by the government. The government as well insured 80% of the size of the investment of the private investors, and they gave them an option to buy back the government part. And this is really what made the current VC sector in Israel. Some of the ingredients behind the large amount of startup companies in Israel, there is a cultural element of entrepreneurship culture. People are used to take risks, handle risks. It's fine to fail. It's a very important element. So if you fail, you can move on to your next venture. And people also get some training in their army about leadership and teamwork, which are critical elements. There is also substantial R&D in Israel, approximately 5% of GDP. It's the highest among OECD countries. Very high level of academic institutions, a strong R&D activity of multinational companies such as Microsoft, IBM, HP, Intel. They are not in Israel for the low-cost R&D, but because it's a real center of innovation. There is, as mentioned, a very active government policy in support system, as well in its tax relief system. We were also lucky to have, during the 90s, a very substantial immigration wave from the Eastern European countries. I think it's around 1/6 of the population coming in within a few years. Many of them highly skilled and they were able to participate in the boost of the industry. And we have a locally managed advanced VC industry. Every project needs financing, and I try to highlight some of the sources for finance during the stages of companies. It starts with, in many cases, friends and family, also sometimes called fools. Angel investors, there are around 200 angel investors in Israel, VCs, Israeli ones, and multinational ones, names like Sequoia, Greylock, are active in Israel. The government system through the Chief Scientist Office, corporate investment, a relatively new tool called venture lending to support more advanced companies, and the successful companies can go public. To discuss a little bit some of the government plans and support system, most of them are concentrated under the Ministry of Trade and Finance through the Chief Scientist Office. They have a number of programs. I picked a few. One would just grant funds to companies to do R&D. They handle the technology incubators, which I understand did not work well in most places. But I think the lessons or benefits of the incubators is, first, we have around 26 of these around the country. They are spread around the country. So it means that people, even not in the center of the country, can have access to capital. And another thing, they, in many cases, would finance projects that other investors wouldn't touch. And it can be very technologically ambitious projects. VCs sometimes tend to be risk-averse and not risk-takers. And in this is a nice solution. We also have some binational funds where we're marrying American marketing capabilities with Israel technology, and they get funding for this from both sides. Some of my observations during the years of being in this industry, it struck me strange that many projects come in waves. You'll see in 2 months, 8 projects in search engines, 10 projects in payments. Now it's social networks. It's, you talked about the fact that it's good to have many discs companies, but sometimes it's too much. And it's amazing that companies get the money as well. It is clear that the VC sector is under attack worldwide and specifically in Israel for bad ROI for at least 12 years. And there is lack of resources in the last couple of years. And the model needs improvements. It was mentioned that Israel always question why we don't have our own Nokia. There are merits to have the large amount of startups, but also to have the big companies in the same country. Also, I think there is a lesson from the fact that there are sometimes national projects. I mentioned the Lavi. There is now a different project called Better Place. It's not national, but I saw information that our president called automakers, CEOs, to get this company running. It was also, I think it's important to notice that serial entrepreneurs have a higher rate of success. It works well in some cases. I think it's surprising because one would expect that once you have an exit, then the drive suddenly disappears, but I guess it's not the case in many cases. But it's also important to finance people with fresh ideas, not serial entrepreneurs. And probably my most important conclusion is that government can really make a difference to promote the private sector in high tech. Thank you, and open to questions.
Brilliant.